Yes, you can pay zero in taxes as an Australian. If you are from Australia and are tired of paying high taxes with little in return, there is a way out. Dubai offers a great opportunity for entrepreneurs and business owners to significantly reduce their tax burden. With no personal income tax and a very low corporate tax, Dubai provides an attractive financial environment. Additionally, the city's strategic location, modern infrastructure, and high standard of living makes it an ideal place to base your operations. By moving yourself and your business to Dubai, you can retain more of your hard-earned money and enjoy a vibrant, business-friendly environment. But before you book a flight, it's crucial to understand the steps required to achieve zero tax liability. And in this video, I will guide you through the process to permanently escape the Australia's high tax system. Hi, my name is Shiraz Wahid, and I've helped more than 100 entrepreneurs move to Dubai and eliminate their taxes legally. And if you want my help in doing the same, you can book a one-on-one call with me at setuphero.com/call. Now, coming to the topic, the first thing is that you must know if you are considered an Australian tax resident or not. This is important because the Australian Tax Authority, or the ATO, is very strict and will try to track down anyone who tries to become a non-tax resident. You are considered an Australian resident if you have always lived in Australia or if you have come there to live permanently. So if you are naturalized, you are still a tax resident of Australia. The general rule for tax residency is having been in Australia for more than 6 months, working a job in the country, and having a place of residence. To avoid being taxed in Australia, you need to become a non-tax resident. And the only way to do that is to have a home overseas outside of Australia. Now, it's not enough just to visit Dubai once in a while. Instead, you need to set up a permanent home. This is because countries like Australia, Canada, and the UK base their tax system on the residency. You don't need to buy a home, but you will need an address or an apartment in another country to avoid being flagged for Australian residency. You'll also need to pass 3 tests that will determine your residency in Australia. These tests include the resides test, the domicile test, and the 183 days rule. Let's go through them one by one and see which one could be applicable on you. The biggest test for Australian tax residency is the resides test. If you permanently reside in Australia, you will be considered an Australian tax resident for all the purposes. In that case, you need to pay taxes in Australia. So even if you live in Dubai part-time, it won't be enough to keep you from paying high taxes to the Australian authorities. The resides test look at things such as your physical presence in the country, your intention of purpose of being in Australia, your family ties and your business ties. Do you have spouse in Australia? Do you have children there? Do you operate your business from Australia? And then the maintenance and location of your assets. Do you have your properties, your bank accounts, mainly within the Australian territories or not? In addition to that, the resides test also look at your social and living arrangements, such as do you go to social clubs, gym, church memberships, and things like that. So the physical presence test is quite simple. It's about the amount of time that you spend in Australia. For tax purposes, the less time that you spend in Australia, the better. It is recommended to limit the time spent in Australia to less than 90 days in a year, or even less if possible. The intention and purpose refers to why you are in the country. Are you visiting a family? Are you on a vacation? These are different from going back to your own apartment and living for more than half of the year as compared to just visiting Australia and meeting some family. In terms of the family, having your entire family in Australia can flag you as an Australian tax resident. Most business owners who relocate abroad also take their families with them to avoid this. Next, we have the business ties. If you have all your clients and business partners in Australia and you operate your businesses from Australia, it makes you look more like an Australian tax resident. The same goes for employed person who's employed by an Australian company and working in Australia. And then there's your assets. This refers to where your companies are registered and where you have your bank accounts. If all your financial interests are outside of Australia, it strengthens your case for non-tax residency. And this is where we set up a company in a low tax free zone jurisdiction of Dubai, establish your bank accounts for personal and corporate bank, and renegotiate your clients' contracts using this new company in UAE to make your business entirely centered in UAE instead of having it operating from the Australian territory. Lastly, we have the social and the living arrangements. If you have a home in Australia that you use as a primary residence, you will almost always be considered as an Australian tax resident. So it's important when you're breaking your tie from the Australian tax residency that you either sell the house that is your primary residence or rent it out on a permanent basis, ideally using an intermediary letting company so that there's a arm's length distance between you and the property is then converted into an investment property instead of the residential property that you had. Another test that I mentioned to determine your Australian tax residency status is the 183 days rule. Well, this is simple. If you spend more than 183 days in Australia, you will be considered a tax resident of that country, and you will be liable for taxes to the ATO on your worldwide income. This applies even if you have a foreign company. So even if you set up a company in a foreign country such as Dubai and pay taxes there, but if you run it from Australia, the ATO may consider that as an Australian company and put a tax rate as if it is based and operating out of Australia. Now, let's get into the steps that you need to take in order to move your center of life to Dubai that can enable you to break your tax residency from the Australian tax system. The first thing that you need to do is to set up a company and a residency permit in Dubai. You don't need to renounce your Australian citizenship. You just need to set up a UAE company, get a long-term UAE residence visa, and open your business and personal bank accounts in Dubai. After that, you need to start removing your ties with Australia. You should have no car, no primary home, no mailing address. If you have a family that includes your spouse and children, you need to move them to Dubai with you as well. The next step is to establish strong ties in Dubai. This means renting and buying an apartment, hiring employees, and participating in local business activities. Finally, you need to spend at least 90 days in Dubai to secure your tax residency certificate. If your business operations, your home, and your social life are all centered around the UAE, it will make it clear to the ATO that you are no longer a tax resident of Australia. This will allow you to legally reduce your tax obligations and avoid unexpected tax bills from the ATO. As you can see, moving from Australia to Dubai is not simple. You need to move your assets and your life out of Australia and establish a clear fact for ATO that you are no longer a taxable person in Australia. Of course, it always helps if you have experts by your side on both sides of the world, in Australia as well as in Dubai. So if you want to talk to me about moving to Dubai and becoming an Australian non-tax resident, you can book a one-on-one call directly with me at setuphero.com/call to get a customized strategy for your case. That's it for today, and I will see you in the next video.